COHEA, are we ready to begin?
We are ready to begin, council member.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Thank you. All righty. COHEA, are we ready to begin?
We are ready to begin, council member.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Thank you. All righty. Are we getting an echo?
Just a bit, working on it now.
All right. So you want to let us know when we can begin without the echo, please?
Absolutely, just 1 minute.
My son, I'm gonna call the council and hearing, but I'm at home. I'm not going anywhere. Okay. Thank you very much. I'll call you soon.
Already, council member.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And we'll begin the hearing. Good morning, everyone. I am at-large council member Anita Bonds, chairperson of the Committee on Housing and Executive Administration. The time is 10:31 a.m. on Thursday, September 29th, 2022. We are meeting remotely via Zoom to hold a roundtable on the following nominations for the Housing Finance Agency Board of Directors. PR 24-0776, District of Columbia Housing Finance Agency Board of Director, Brian Scotty Irving, Confirmation Resolution of 2022. PR 24-777, District of Columbia Housing Finance Agency Board of Directors, Heather Howard, Confirmation Resolution of 2022. PR 24-778, District of Columbia Housing Finance Agency Board of Directors, Stanley Jackson, Confirmation Resolution. The Housing Finance Agency was established in 1979 as a corporate body with a legal existence separate from the district government to stimulate and expand housing ownership and rental housing opportunities for low and moderate income families. Through its multifamily division, the Housing Finance Agency issues taxable, tax-exempt mortgage revenue bonds to lower the cost of financing affordable multifamily housing development. It also works with the Department of Housing and Community Development to issue 4% low-income housing tax credits and invest directly in the creation of new housing units through the Housing Investment Platform. Through its single-family programs, the Housing Finance Agency administers home ownership assistance, such as the Home Purchase Assistance Program that many refer to as HPAP, the DC Open Doors, and the REMIT program. Our first nominee that we will entertain today is just a slight change in what you may have received in the way of original agenda. We'll first turn to Ms. Heather Howard, who was nominated by Mayor Bowser for reappointment as a member of the Housing Finance Agency Board of Directors with experience in home building, real estate, architecture, or planning for a term to end on June 28th, 2023. Ms. Howard is the Vice President of Development at FD Stonewater, a real estate brokerage, development, investment, and advisory firm. She has served as a member of the Housing Finance Agency Board of Directors since 2019. Ms. Howard has 16 years of experience as a commercial real estate developer and has managed new construction, base building renovations, and tenant improvements for more than 3 million square feet of space, totaling more than $800 million. Our second nominee is Mr. Brian Scotty Irving. He was nominated by Mayor Bowser for reappointment as a member of the Housing Finance Agency Board of Directors with experience in home building, real estate, architecture, or planning for a term to end on June 28th, 2023. Mr. Irving is the owner and founder of Blue Sky Construction and Development. He has served as a member of the Housing Finance Agency Board of Directors for the past 6 years. Mr. Irving has over 16 years of residential and commercial construction and development experience and utilizes his expertise to oversee the successful development of thousands of units of affordable housing across the district, and he has served more than 700,000 residents in this role. Our third nominee is Mr. Stanley Jackson. He was nominated by Mayor Bowser for reappointment as a member of the Housing Finance Agency Board of Directors, representing community and consumer interests for a term to end on June 28th, 2023. Mr. Jackson was first appointed to the Housing Finance Agency Board of Directors in 2012, and he has served continuously since 2016. He is the president and CEO of the Anacostia Economic Development Corporation, a leading and progressive DC nonprofit economic development organization. Mr. Jackson has over 3 decades of housing and economic development experience, serving in key private, public, and nonprofit leadership roles. During his tenure with the district, he directed the district's participation in the development of over 6,700 units of newly constructed and rehabilitated affordable housing for seniors, special needs, and very low to moderate income residents. And Mr. Jackson has served our community, the District of Columbia, as the Deputy Mayor for Economic Development. And so at this time, I'd like to recognize any of my colleagues. Do we have any? All right. So we are on this together, nominees, and I'll turn to receiving the testimony first from Ms. Howard, then Mr. Irving, and then Mr. Jackson. And I will ask you, since you are serving in your capacity, if you would raise your right hand so we can be sworn in. Okay. Do you swear and affirm your testimony and any statements that you make before us today to be truthful and complete?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
All righty. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Ms. Howard, we will begin with your testimony.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairperson Bonds, members, and staff of the Committee of Housing and Executive Administration. I would like to thank Mayor Bowser for nominating me for reappointment to the District of Columbia Housing Finance Agency Board of Directors. I'd also like to thank Chairperson Bonds and the Committee on Housing and Executive Administration for having me here today and for your deep commitment to building and providing dignified housing to our low-income neighbors. I support the mission of DCHFA to advance the District of Columbia's housing priorities by investing in affordable housing and neighborhood development, which provides pathways for DC residents to transform their lives, and I'm grateful to serve on the agency's board. I am a resident of Ward 5 in Washington, D.C. I'm an institutional commercial real estate professional and have worked in the commercial real estate in the D.C. area for over 16 years. In my career as a commercial real estate developer, I've managed new construction, base building, tenant improvements for more than 3 million square feet of space, totaling more than 800 million. I started my professional career here in DC at Combined Properties as a property manager, where I managed over 1.5 million square feet of retail space throughout the DC metropolitan area. I then moved on to the JBG companies, where I worked in development, managing all aspects of real estate development process for the company's large-scale office, hotel, multifamily, and mixed-use development projects. During my time at JBG, I managed the development of over 1,200 hotel rooms and 500,000 square feet of trophy office product. I am currently the Vice President of Development at FD Stonewater, a real estate brokerage, development, investment, and advisory firm where I manage all aspects of ground-up development projects and renovations for the firm nationally. My active projects at FD Stonewater include 120 million GSA leased office restack and renovation and a 9-acre mixed-use public-private partnership between several private entities and local governments and the federal government. I was born in the Bronx, New York, and grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, before moving to DC to attend college at the George Washington University, where I received a Bachelor of Business Administration. I went on to earn a Master of Science in Real Estate Development from the Colvin Institute at the University of Maryland. I'm active in the community and through community service involvement with my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. In 2022, I was elected the president of the African American Real Estate Professionals of DC, a DC-based organization dedicated to furthering opportunities for minorities in real estate. Personally, I also volunteer with various community organizations and am often a featured speaker at local schools and colleges. I'm eager to continue my service on the DC HFA board. Making home ownership attainable to all residents of DC remains a priority to me. I grew up in affordable rental housing with my mother and my grandmother in New York City and Boston. I have lived in the DC metro area for over 20 years, and I have personally and professionally witnessed the rapidly changing environment that has caused the cost of housing to increase dramatically for DC residents. Through my personal experiences with affordable housing, I have witnessed firsthand the importance of creating long-term affordable housing for individuals and families. I've seen the life-changing impacts of affordable housing on individuals and communities. And since my appointment on the board of the directors, I have voted to approve the issuance of bonds for close to 40 development projects. The three largest induced bonds amounts are Skyline, 86 million roughly, Residences at Kenilworth, approximately 72 million, and Hill East, approximately 71 million. My personal background, coupled with my professional experience, have helped to sustain my commitment as a board member overseeing DC HFA and furthering its mission to advance DC housing priorities by investing in affordable housing and neighborhood development. DC HFA works with for-profit and nonprofit developers to offer financing that supports the development of affordable housing in the district. When working with developers on these programs, it's important to be able to look at the transaction from all aspects. In my professional career, I have worked to acquire, finance, and develop deals, and will continue to bring my experience as someone who has sat on the other side of the table working in these areas. My experience as a developer has and will continue to assist me in evaluating initiatives led by DC HFA to offer financing programs that further support the development in DC. I have played a key role in obtaining the conveyance of legal rights and approvals from governmental entities, including the planned unit development process for over 2 million square feet of mixed-use projects. By actively managing the entitlement process, I have become proficient in navigating zoning regulations and other permitting processes to keep projects on track. I have developed an awareness of the internal processes and organizational structures at various agencies and will continue to bring this valuable knowledge to the board regarding moving projects forward efficiently and lawfully. The past 2 years have been challenging amidst an ongoing pandemic that has affected DC residents both personally and professionally. As a member of the board, I have contributed to DC HFA's efforts to remain steady on its course to provide resources to developers and residents, and by investing in affordable housing and neighborhood development. I am proud of what the agency has been able to achieve during these trying times, and I'm eager to continue to work with DC HFA as we build back and continue to work with Mayor Bowser, the council, our fellow housing partners, and developers to advance the housing priorities of the District of Columbia. I especially look forward to furthering investments that allow for the preservation of housing by bridging loans for pre-development budgets and providing opportunities for smaller yet capable developers that work with us to advance our mission. This concludes my testimony. Thank you again for having me to appear before you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for that testimony. I have just a couple of questions. One, in your testimony, you said, I have played a key role in obtaining the conveyance of legal rights and approvals for government entities, including the PUD or the planned unit development process for over 2 million square feet of mixed-use projects. Can you give us a little more detail about the key role that you have played in obtaining the conveyance of the legal rights?
Absolutely. So as a development manager at my previous job at the JBG companies, I was responsible for the overseeing of phase 1 of the wharf prior to our sale to Hoffman, who ultimately ended up being the master developer. So I was actively involved in the stage 1 approval of the PUD process for parcel 5, which is the hotel that's currently the canopy that sits off of 7th Street. Additionally, I worked on Eckington Yards, which is in Northeast neighborhood, and that was ultimately developed by the JBG companies and secured the PUD approval for that process, as well as several office buildings throughout the district and other agencies in other areas nationally.
And so when I read this testimony, I'm really reading that your involvement was in bringing community aboard, or was there something more?
It's both. So actively in the community, working with the ANC, understanding what the community needs are. So when we're developing there, we're developing consciously and respectful of the community, but also managing the budget, managing the timeline, managing the permanent process, understanding the design. So that is, it's built into the structure of the environment and we're respectful of the architecture. So it's from acquisition, working with the community, working on the permanent, and also overseeing the construction, making sure the general contractor has the correct assumptions, the budget approval, any change orders that are going on, and overseeing the site walks and managing the process throughout substantial completion and the certificate of occupancy.
All right, so you are telling us too that this process that you've been involved in as you move forward to complete the various projects is not a 9-to-5, that it is a duration. I'm getting that message, and I really want the public to understand that part too. So frequently we in community see the hard hats walking from a construction site around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and like, okay, maybe that's why it takes a duration of time for the completion of these projects. But you're really educating us that it's a little more involved than just the bricks and mortar that we see going up on the so-called skin and the interior. So I just use that opportunity to bring that point to the table.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate your testimony on that. Now, just wanted to ask you a little bit about your board work, because this is such a vital entity in our community. What do you believe are the most significant responsibilities of the board?
The most significant responsibilities of the board are working with the district agencies, the council, to keep housing affordable for DC residents. It's also working to open opportunities for developers. We have a lot of talent in the district. So those bridge loans are very important to me, that those projects that we're working on with the agency, because it allows us to increase our housing stock, whether it's new development or renovation of existing buildings that need to be preserved in the district. So I'd say those are my top 2 things.
Okay. And have you responded to all of the pre-hearing questions in particular that were sent to you?
Yes,
Were you
ma'am.
able to? Okay, all right. And I have your form here. I want to put on the record. In number 10, it says, please list the location of all real estate properties in which you have an interest with a fair market value in excess of $5,000. And what I have here is 2824 12th Street Northeast, Unit 102, and the other is 2823 12th Street Northeast. Is that another unit or the same unit?
They are separate properties. 2823 12th Street is a single family home, and 2824 Unit 102 is a condo within a multifamily building.
All right, okay. And I have your list of professional organizations, and you have indicated you have made contribution to Mayor Bowser 2022, and to Kenyon McDuffie 2022. And I guess the only other indication here is it's asked number 8, provide the name of each business entity in which you or any member of your immediate family serves as an officer, director, partner, or agent. And you have listed Cubed Development LLC. You're the owner, and it's a real estate consulting service.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And for number 29, it says, please provide the status of any ongoing legal proceedings in which you are named as a defendant, respondent, or party, including a description of any allegations contained therein, a complete legal history of the matter, and how the allegations have been addressed at every stage of the proceeding. And you indicated it is not applicable to you. Am I correct?
That is correct.
All right, okay. I thank you very much for that. At this time, I see that I've been joined by colleague Councilmember Silverman, who is a member of the committee. And so if you would like to make a statement before we move forward, I'm happy to receive it. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Bonds. Good to see you, even though you're next door, I think. Virtual world, gotta love it. And good to see our nominees, and hello to the public watching. I do want to make a statement, Councilmember Bonds. You know, DC HFA, our housing finance agency, is, I think, an underappreciated agency in terms of the critical funding that it provides, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars in affordable housing. And these are taxpayer dollars. These are your tax dollars and my dollars. And given that housing is, everywhere I go, people are asking, how can we make the city more affordable? I think we want to make sure that we're using our taxpayer dollars in, you know, in a transparent way, that our residents have trust in how we're using those dollars to achieve our affordability goals. And in order to have that trust, we need systems that are transparent and free of conflicts of interest. It's not a surprise, I think, to you, Councilmember Bonds, or to others on the council, that I have had serious concerns about appearances. And I want to be clear about appearances of conflicts with the DC HFA board for several years now. And information I learned yesterday from my staff has only exacerbated those concerns. So in preparation for this morning, my office went through the board meeting minutes from January 2021 through August 2022 to review the votes taken on affordable housing developments. So in these last 20 months, the board took votes on affordable housing developments 40 times. Of those 40 votes, one or more of the 5 DC HFA board members had to recuse themselves from the vote due to a conflict of interest. A total of 26 times, 26 out of 40 times, at least one board member had to recuse themselves because there was a vote involving deals that they were involved in. Now, I want to be clear that these board members did the right thing in recusing themselves, and nobody broke the rules. But what I think is problematic here is that that while recusing yourself from votes on your own developments meets the letter of the law, I don't think it meets the spirit. And I'm concerned about the lasting impact of having a system where board members are able to use more than half of the funding we provide and having ample ability to push, or the possible ability, let's say, to push their competition out of the market. I mean, this is a small board where everyone knows each other. And I think it gets to the trust issue, in that it's a small group of people making decisions about a lot of taxpayer dollars on important projects. And it's hard, I think a lot of members of the public would say it's hard to imagine that people would often vote against their fellow board members. So just to get back to my point, if board members are getting more than half of the money available, does that send a message to other developers that the only way they can get a deal done is to give a piece of it to a DCHFA board member? Does it send a message that they're not going to be competitive in the district, so they should just do business in other jurisdictions? I think that's a concern as well. In January 2020, as you know, Councilmember Bonds, I introduced the DCHFA Conflict of Interest Prevention Amendment Act that would have prohibited board members from receiving district affordable housing funds during their service on the board. It wouldn't prevent them from doing developments without district affordable housing funds, and it didn't prevent them from developing affordable housing in other jurisdictions. I was told that if this bill were to come to pass, that the board would lose all of the expertise it needs and the sky would fall. But 3 other large housing finance agencies have the same prohibition, and a 4th limits the amount of interest a board member can have in developments that use housing finance authority funds. So I would just say, if it builds trust and they can do it, why shouldn't we? I think that given the importance of affordable housing in our city, the importance of our residents and businesses having trust in our government, and that we not only erase any true conflicts, but even appearances of conflicts, that we should take a serious look at enacting this legislation. I know you've been generous in my time for an opening statement, Councilmember Bonds. I can either stop here and we can move on to the other witnesses and use this as my time for Ms. Howard, or I do have a few questions if that's allowable.
It is certainly allowable, as you well know, for you to ask questions. Thank you for your statement, and I can be responsive to you away from this particular hearing on those matters if you would like.
That'd be great.
So please do your questioning.
Okay, thank you. So Ms. Howard, this is your 2nd term, is that correct, on the DCHFA board?
Yes, it is, Councilmember.
Okay. How would you say that your private sector experience helps inform your decisions as a board member?
My private sector experience as in development, I'm someone that manages development. I'm someone that goes through the process. I have experience in the entitlement, construction, financing, acquisition. So when the inducement bonds are put before us for review, when we're reviewing projects, I'm able to see if their assumptions based on my experience are accurate. I'm able to ask questions that are relevant to the topic type. My direct experience is in development and construction, so I understand the concerns that people have with the changing market and supply chain issues, and making sure we're, voting on things that are actually possible and timelines that can be achieved. That's how it relates.
Okay, thank you. Does your company provide any services to any housing developers?
Can you be specific on services? What do you mean by services?
Do you do any business with housing developers?
FD Stonewater, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Does your company receive any funds from the district government?
I
Any
would
housing
have to verify
any
that.
subsidies or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. I would have to double check.
Okay. In your years of experience, and as you just chronicled in development and construction and project management, have you worked with many people who meet the requirements for serving on the board but do not receive district funds for their work? Getting at this issue of if we put in a conflict of interest provision, let's say that while you served on the board, you couldn't have any projects before the board. Do you think that would severely limit who is even eligible for serving on the board?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Because can you expand on that?
So DC is unique, and I think it's important to have active developers on the board as we're assessing the deals and helping the agency. So I think that it would create a problem. I don't think that there's a conflict of interest. I think we're transparent, but I think that it would create an issue.
Because there just aren't that many developers in town?
No, I don't think it's that there's many developers. I think that you need people that are have expertise in the areas that we're doing, and that's the developers that you want to sit on the board to guide the agency. I think we're capable of keeping our interests separate. So I don't think that it's a necessary resolution.
Okay, thank you very much for your candid answers. I appreciate it. Thank you, Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you. Our next candidate we will hear from is Mr. Brian Scotty Irving. We'll receive your testimony when you're ready.
All right, good morning. I wanted to make sure I was off mute. I don't want to be speaking and no one hears me. The elephants happen at home, but not today. So good morning, Councilwoman Bonds and members of the Committee of Housing and Executive Administration, staff members and members of the community. My name is Brian Scotty Irving. I am the owner and founder of Blue Sky Construction, Blue Sky Development. I am pleased to be here testifying before you this morning. Before I begin, I would like to thank Mayor Muriel Bowser for this renomination to serve on this board of directors. It has been an honor and a pleasure to serve my city in such an impactful way. For the past 6 years, I have served on this board as a member. During my tenure of the city, we have successfully invested over $3 billion in creating and preserving more than 8,000 affordable units across the district. As far as I know, this investment of affordable housing is the largest per capita in any city in the country. I am honored to be in this city and committed to continue to work on building affordable housing opportunities in this city, and which creates more affordable housing than any place in this country, as I said before. As a native Washingtonian, this work is truly a passion for me. For more than 30 years ago, my grandfather introduced me to development, an industry in which I have been able to make my city better than what he founded and what I founded. Because of him, my company and I stands on the shoulder of greatness and continue to set the path forward to create more affordable housing and equity in housing for all who call DC home. My personal and professional passion aligns with this agency. For more than 16 years, my company has been committed to advance our city housing priority and keep affordable housing on the forefront of the city in our work. We have been able to develop over 1,000 units across DC, 1,000 affordable units across the district, and support the mayor's goal of building 12,000 new affordable units by 2025. Although each development project, we do will transform the lives of others and set forward a pathway forward to the middle class. As I mentioned earlier, it has been an honor to serve the 700,000 residents of the District of Columbia in my role, from the community outreach and educating to advancing the agency on several projects and advising the agency on several projects. The work I've done as a board member has truly been rewarding. We have also impacted the lives of Washingtonians by creating the Todd Lee Scholarship Fund. Through this fund, we have been able to set the pathway for a new generation of contributors to affordable housing and honor the late great Todd Lee in both education and affordable housing. To this date, the agency has awarded 10 scholarships to young Washingtonians. With this reappointment, I look forward to the opportunity of future contributing to the betterment of more Washingtonians and more investment in affordable housing. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I'm available for any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Irving. I'll start with your pre-hearing questions, and just want to, you have indicated 16 years of working on projects, particularly affordable projects in the city. Can you give us a little snippet of some of the projects? I have here a listing, and I'm looking at item number 8. I know it's so many units that have been created,
Okay,
but
so
yes, it may be pretty difficult, but if you could give us a little snippet, that would help.
okay. Park 7 on the corner of Minnesota Benning, which is 372 affordable units at 60% AMI. One of the other projects that we're truly excited and glad about, which is Park Kennedy, which is 272 units. And I think we were supposed to do 30% of those units at affordable and end up doing 100 units between the IZ and affordability covenant.
Okay. And when you do these units, can you talk a little bit about the financing or the bond assistance that you receive through the Housing Finance Agency, and speak a little bit as to whether or not you felt it was inappropriate for your organization to have you sitting on a body that is making such important decisions, and you're also a contractor.
Okay, so Park 7 was, and I think still is, the largest affordable project that came before the council and came before the board that created this opportunity. I think we couldn't have built this project without the board bonds and the tax credits to create this opportunity. I think that my experience of sitting on the board helps me see other deals and understand the complexity that other developers who build affordable housing go through. If I didn't have the experience of understanding the cash flow analysis of what would happen when you build affordable units and be sitting on that board when they come before us, most deals when doing traditional financing, the end user or the loan officer looks for cash flow. On this board, because I sit on this board, I understand there's going to be some complications in that. So as being a board member, I can see that because I have experienced that on the Park 7 project, where there's absolutely no cash flow, but we continue to provide affordable housing for more than 1,500 individuals that lives in Washington, D.C.
All right, and so because you sit on the board, does it in any way affect whether or not you, or whether you feel comfortable coming and asking for bonds? Or is it that this is the entity that you must come to if you are doing construction, residential construction?
It's the industry that it's the board that I must come to and ask for. In order for us to build affordable housing and use the tax credits, I must come to the board in order to create these opportunities. And I do not see it as a conflict. I recuse myself by law on any deal that affects me, or if I think it's in impropriety, I make it clear up front. I sign the legal paperwork and then I remove myself.
All right. One of the solutions that I had considered just prior to the pandemic was that board members who have projects before the Housing Finance Agency would actually make their submission, and then they would walk away, sort of like take a leave from the board, sabbatical, until a decision was made on their project. Can you speak to whether or not that's feasible, whether or not it would mean that we would have to expand the size of the board, or just what? Because I want to talk to Mr. Jackson, who has extensive experience doing working with and inside our government, about what are we talking about when we speak to these issues and equity, and how do we grow? Because my common sense tells me that at some point in the beginning of these processes, the majority developers were called upon to help put in place the regulations that we have. And I'm trying to understand what we can do in the city to promote our small minority contracting industry, and at the same time take advantage of others that may want to be a part of this, or that may say that they will build affordable housing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I know that Stan can answer. I met Stan in the role of as Deputy Mayor of Economic Development some 30-some years, so he can answer on his end. But I think you hit on a fair and valid point. One of the things about being a developer in the city and being on the board goes back to your comment. We have put HIP in place, and HIP is a program for smaller local developers that we had a chance to fund and stand that program up so they can continue to build affordable housing. One of those individuals, Harvey Yancey, has built for sale housing, and that's a unique place. We always hear that DC leads the country in the way that affordable housing is built. And the reason that we lead the country is because most of us have been here for 15, 20 years and was born here. So we understand the uniqueness of what it takes to get these deals done, and also to continue to grow the African-American community. I know that we're talking about how we change this board and what we do and what we don't do, but I honestly want to say, if we look across this whole city and we look for the unfair equity across this whole city, it's because we have breaking up boards, we have put people on boards that wasn't born and raised here, and they are not unique to what this city needs in order for Black people in this city to be successful. And if we continue to do that, we will see disparity continue to spread across this city. This board is unique the way it is. It has 5 board members. We have all been a part of this community since birth, and that's why we continue to see African-American programs being developed from this board, as far as scholarships, as far as the HIP program, as far as the impact at the HBCUs, as far as home ownership being developed. That's why it's this way. But if we continue to broaden this out and put people who don't really understand the uniqueness of our community, we will continue to see the African-American community erode. That's my
Well, I appreciate that comment. Thank you very much. I agree that DC is unique. We all who live here, cherish it and feel that we are unique. I really was hoping that we would hear a little more about whether or not you feel compromised when your proposal is before the board, or do you have anything whatsoever to do with the voting or the decision making that takes place when your project is before the board?
I do not feel compromised, and let me be honest, my grandfather was born here in 1900, 4th of July, And I remember the stories of him and my mother telling me of people, if they standing on the street corner being accused of compromise or being violated. I'm just someone saying that I'm violating the law or implications to me is, I don't really like the whole insinuation of it, because that's just, if we meet the law, we met the law. Why are we been speculating that we're violating the law? Because someone else's perception of us. That's a really hard lane that you're asking us to process and think about, that we are violating the law. I don't feel compromised, if that's what you're looking for. No.
I appreciate that. May I ask just a few more questions here? Do you have any outstanding liability for tax fees or other payments to the district, federal, or other state, local governments?
I do not.
All right. What is the biggest challenge that the Housing Finance Agency has faced during your, I think you've been on for 8 years, I believe it is?
Yes, I think so, 16.
Mhm.
I think
6 years.
today and time is bond cap issues, today and time. And I think just building affordable housing and making sure that we could continue to build affordable housing for, I think we got to find a way, how do we create more home ownership? I think that we can build affordable rental units constantly, but it's the ownership part that we have to learn how to continue to develop and create home ownership.
Why is home ownership so difficult?
So I think the way that we can use the bonds and the way that we can use the tax credits, I think, and when we have done this, I think, and Stan and Heather could go into this. Also, I think that we are using local funds as far as how we're using the HIP program. And I think the way we use bonds and tax credits on the federal side is the biggest problem.
Okay, and so you'll have to explain that to us when you say how you use them.
Well, how they syndicate it, because bonds are used for a specific program to be paid back, and so are tax credits used to be burnt off by a corporation.
Okay.
So that's what I mean.
Well, you know, we have in position now the local LIHTC program. And it's traditionally has been used very seldom, but when it's used, it is used after the application of the federal LIHTC program. So I wonder, do you think we need to take a closer look at the local and see, because it seems to me we may very well have individuals in DC residents and businesses that would like to participate, help us build affordability. Maybe this is home ownership is an arena that they would consider. I don't know. I don't know if it can be used that way. You would have to tell me.
Yeah, and I think
I
think that's a conversation that your office and committee should have with Chris Donaldson on how we implement that or use that program, use the local program to see how we create more affordable home ownership.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You've been very generous with your comments. I'll turn to Councilmember Silverman.
Mr. Irving, I want to pick up on something you said a few moments ago. So you said that DC leads the country and how affordable housing is built. You know, and I agree with you, you know, and we put the money behind the rhetoric, right? I mean, this budget, upcoming budget, we're going to put $450 million into the Housing Production Trust Fund. DC HFA has done some very innovative things in terms of leveraging our good faith and credit. And so here's, I think, where the difficulty is marrying that with what Ms. Howard said, which is, well, there's just very few developers in this town. And I think that's where we have a difficult time figuring out why, given that we're the most innovative place when it comes to affordable housing that there aren't more Black and minority developers who are involved in housing production in our city.
Mhm.
And I want to hit the reset button a little bit on what you said, because it's not about wrongdoing. It's about that it seems like there's a very small, in a place that has a lot of money and
Mhm.
is doing a lot of innovative work in affordable housing, there seems to be a very small group of people who seem to get that money,
Mhm.
right? It seems to me in a place like DC, this would be a place with let's say Howard's Business School, that we'd have a lot of aspiring Black developers who are like, I want to get in on that innovation in DC.
Mhm.
But that what we keep hearing from you, from Ms. Howard, from others is, oh, well, it's a very small group of people. And frankly, Councilmember Silverman, you know, there isn't a big number of people to draw from. And I think that's the dissonance. But let me get to a few questions for you before my time runs out. Let me ask you, Mr. Irving, you've served for 8 years, I think you told Councilmember Bonds.
6.
Yes, 6 years.
6 years.
Uh-huh.
So in those 6 years, have you ever voted no on an application submitted by one of your fellow board members?
Yes. Yes. I think
Tell us about that
I
one.
think it's the U Street deal, if I recall. I think it might be the U Street deal.
Okay, and why did you vote no?
I thought that we all voted no because I think the price to build the units on U Street, we wanted to make sure that the unit cost was correct. And
Okay.
I think that might been a former board member, I think.
So you're saying that this was a project by a former board member?
Yeah, it
The
might have been.
person wasn't on the board at the time. Did you ever vote no on a project by a current board member?
I cannot recall, Council. I will have to do some research and get back with you.
Okay,
I cannot recall.
maybe we can work on that together.
Okay, thank you.
So as I mentioned, my staff did some research, Mr. Irving. Do you know how many transactions your company has gotten DCHFA funding for in the 6 years you've served on the board?
As a developer, ma'am?
If you have any involvement in a project that came before the board for funding?
Yeah, I think 2, ma'am.
2 over 6 years.
Yes, ma'am, 2.
Which one, do you mind telling us about?
One
those
is
projects?
the Ethel, which is an all affordable permanent placement housing, 100 units for women. And I think Park 7, that was done 8 years ago or 6 years ago.
Okay, and do you know the total amount of money you got from the HFA for those?
Yeah, I
two?
think out of the $3 billion we have spent, I think it was $100 million.
$100 million.
Yeah, out of the $3 billion, it was $100 million, I think.
Okay, and were there projects that you didn't receive funding for in those 6 years?
Yeah, I have only had 2 before the board.
You had 2 before the board and
That was it.
got
Only
funding.
2 over the 6 years. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what about parcel 42?
Yes, ma'am.
You also received funding for
I
that?
think we did receive funding for that. I'm not a majority developer on that project.
Okay, as I was saying, I was asking if you have any, involvement, any partnership.
Yeah,
on the
parcel
project.
42 did receive funds. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, and how much money did you receive on parcel 42?
Well, that's a good question, but I don't know. I'm low on the total pole in that development deal.
Okay, that's fair. Maybe we can work on that together too.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so you were saying everyone voted no on a project, this U Street project.
Yeah, I think that was.
From a former board member. You have not voted no. You have, it sounds like at least 3 projects that received funding from DCHFA while you were serving on the board. Do you have any projects currently before the board right now?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Earlier this year, the board discussed the possibility of lowering the fees the agency charges developers, which it uses to fund itself. Now, as you said, you've had projects before the board, and this would benefit, obviously, you. Would you recuse yourself from that vote since it would directly benefit you if you had a project?
I think I've made it clear in public record, we haven't voted on that deal, but I have made it clear that I'm against reducing any fees.
Okay, so you're against reducing the fees?
Yes.
Okay, thank
I
you.
made that
Thank
clear.
you for clarifying that. So let me get your reaction, Mr. Irving. I think I gave a statistic before that in the past, I think it was 16 months, maybe 20 months, past 20 months, that there have been 40 projects that you and your fellow board members have voted on, and 26 of them had some involvement from the 5 board members.
Mhm.
Do you think what do you think about that?
For me, at the end of the day, I would ask you how many affordable units was built. Because my main concern is how many affordable units are built for the residents of the DC government.
So I hear you, but the other argument that could be made, and I'm going to use your argument, is that, there are a lot of, I think one thing we both believe in is to use the power of the government to help Black and minority businesses, right? That was I always remember in Dream City, Marion Barry came into DC government and realized that something like 3% of our money went to Black businesses. He said, I got to change that. So here's the thing, is there's a very small group of developers, including Black developers like yourself, who are getting a lot of DCHFA's money. And I think the issue is we have a lot of, Black developers, other developers who would, especially let's say Black and minority developers, you care about that, I care about that as well. But only a very small group of them are getting access to these valuable, bonds and subsidies that help build affordable housing. And it doesn't seem like the pie is growing in terms of the development community. Do you think that's an unfair perception?
I think it's an unfair perception to think that we are violating the law.
Well, I'm not saying that. That's what I'm saying. Let's hit the reset button. It's not about violating the law. It's just that there's this very small group of people who know each other, who are taking, who are getting the access to this funding that might prevent others, similar Black developers, maybe smaller developers, aspiring developers who also want access to that money to create affordable housing, but they haven't been able to access it. So, and I'll just tell you anecdotally what I'm hearing is they're going to Prince George's County and doing that development. They're going to Fairfax because they're saying, you know what, there's a small insular group in district government that controls the housing funds. And so we're going to visit Ms. Also Brooks, and we're going to visit Fairfax because it's hard to do business in the district. And these are minority developers.
Yeah, and I think that our city needs to be, so you're asking about why is this number small, a small number of developers? Because our city needs to stop putting this money with white banks that don't give Black people money, loan Black companies money to build their capacity. That's that's number one, why the pot is so small. The pot is so small also because we continue to criminalize Black success and brown success and any success.
Okay,
So
but why?
if we take that off the table and we communicate with the banks that we continue to put our money with and say you need to make more minority loans to close the gap. Because one of the things that tax credits and bonds ask for is, are you liquid? Have any money if this thing goes south? And if minority developers don't have money, then they cannot get bonds, they cannot get tax credits. So the city should do a better job, or the council should pass better laws to make sure that smaller brown and black people get the same money that we are setting to the side for other people.
Okay, I hear you, Mr. Irving. Actually, it's funny, so I think you're saying the responsibility is on that we should be doing more business with like Industrial Bank. I guess it's just interesting because I'm hearing from those same developers that, it seems like there's an inside crowd. And so I'm going to Charles County, I'm going to Prince George's, because I can just bid on a project or put in an application and I don't feel I need to know the same 5 people. So anyway, I look forward to working with you on this because I think we both had the same goal in mind here. And thank you very much, Councilmember Bonds. I know I'm 2 minutes over.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Irving.
Very
We'll
welcome.
now turn to get testimony from Mr. Stanley Jackson. Good morning again and welcome.
Good morning, Council Chairman Bond and council members of the Committee on Housing and Economic and Executive Administration. Please bear with me. I'm going through flu right now, and my voice
my
is
goodness.
challenging a
Wow.
little bit. But I'm so pleased that you allow me to participate. I am Stanley Jackson. I'm currently the president and CEO of the COHEA Economic Development Corporation and COHEA Holding Corporation, which is a leading progressive District of Columbia nonprofit economic development organization. I am truly honored and pleased to.
Mr. Jackson, could
Can you hear me?
speak up just a little bit? We're losing you, and we know your voice may be weak.
Can you hear me
going
now?
through flu.
Can you hear me now at all?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Pardon me, I'm gonna lean toward my computer so I can get closer.
All righty, thank you.
Good. Again, I want to say how truly pleased I am to appear before you today and discuss my nomination and reappointment to the DC Housing Finance Agency Board, and would like to personally take this opportunity to thank Mayor Mira Bowser for her continued support on me on this committee. As you have said early on, I am a long-term district resident, and I am truly blessed and fortunate to be an accomplished community asset builder and financial leader with over 3 decades of housing and economic development experience and serving key private, public, and nonprofit leadership roles, including Vice President of Virginia National Bank, the Director of the District of Columbia Customer Service and Real Property Assessment Service Administration, Chief of Staff to the first CFO for the District of Columbia, Director of the District of Columbia Department of Housing and Community Development, and the District of Columbia Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, as well as a stint as acting president of the University of District of Columbia. During my tenure in my history here, I directed the district participation in development of over 6,700 units of newly constructed and rehabilitated affordable housing and for seniors, special need residents, and very low to moderate income district residents. I also had the honor to direct the district participation in the development of over $2.5 billion in residential and commercial and entertainment development in our downtown city core. I have had the distinct pleasure to serve on the board of the Housing Finance Agency for a decade now. And I find my experience most impactful with improving the quality of life for the residents of our community that we serve. Also has been most rewarding and satisfying to me that my years of experience and body of work has facilitated my ability to create opportunities that resulted in beneficial outcomes for our city, for our residents, and for the agency that I serve. Chairman Bond, I have a lot that we can discuss, but that concludes my testimony, and I'm available to respond to any questions that you may raise or any of the committee members may raise. I think we are moving into a very creative area that I really think needs a lot of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. And as I look over your pre-hearing, return that you sent to us, where we asked you questions about your financial involvement in various things. One thing that I think will be very curious, and that is, and I would like for you to talk to this, the response to number 9 says provide a description of each contract, subcontract, or grant that any business entity identified in your response to question A, which is provide the name of each business that you are a member of your family or have served as an officer, director, partner, or agent. And the idea is for you to tell us a little bit about these contracts, subcontracts, grants. Are they you, the individual? Is it the board that you run? Or help us understand your answer, please.
None of those awards were to me personally. They were all associated with organizations that I am currently or was currently involved in. And so the benefit was used to further the opportunity to provide support to our community through these gifts and grants. But me personally, I've received nothing in my 30 years with this city on a personal level.
All right, so the ground lease for the development of the residents of St. Elizabeth East Apartments and the 7 historic hospital buildings on the CT campus of St. Elizabeth's into 252 rental apartment units were all a project, or the contract or subcontract or the grant was for the Anacostia Economic Development Corporation, or you, Stanley Jackson?
No, it was actually for St. Development, which is AECC was a part of, and I think that's part of the nomenclature.
All right, so your organization is a part of these.
A party of a large organization that competed for the development of those 7 historic buildings. And that was a major effort because, as you know, that was a hospital building. It did not meet any standards for residential occupation. So we had to go through an amazing array of issues with historic preservation, CFA, National Park Service, and everybody else in order to be able to create the outcome. And I am extremely pleased that we were able to successfully complete the project on time and on budget. And we have received numerous awards as a result of the project. And we have been able to create housing accommodations on that campus for residents who lived in and around that community. So that's a project that I'm very proud of right now.
Well, let me ask you this then, Mr. Jackson, as we are trying to understand the value of the board and the members that serve on the board, which I certainly agree is very important. I'm trying to understand whether or not you, as a former officer of our government, the district government, have an opinion as to whether being on the board facilitated your involvement on these very important projects.
I don't think being on the board facilitated my involvement. My involvement is for the projects were necessary and required. We're trying to transform the quality of life of people in quadrants of our city who have never seen the level of investments that has been continuous. And so every time we try to reimagine how we impact communities that have been vulnerable, there's always this question of what is appropriate. Did we do it without contriteness? I'm gonna push against that. I've been here long enough to know that I've seen this city before. All you gotta do is look at DSLBD. that will give you an indication that minority CBEs versus CBEs have never participated at an equal level, which is why we have a disparity study that's being exposed. So I would suggest that it would be helpful if we would say that we are going into markets that have historically have never seen this level of continuous investment so that we can
Mr. Jackson, we are losing your voice.
Sorry.
It's so important.
I want to say this to you because this is in my heart now. You have to
I
understand
feel it.
that these investments are not personal. These are investments to change the quality of life for people who have no hope. And so I'm simply saying to you that because we find ways in which we can connect and collaborate with other developers. I'm going to be very candid with you. Most of our minority developers, their fundamental challenge is access to capital. If you did not have that struggle, I would think the Scotties of the world, the ADCs of the world could run on our own. But the financial marketplace is such that I can't take my balance sheet, even though it's strong, to a commercial bank and get the same consideration that I can get if I brought a partner in who doesn't look like me. I'm going to be very candid about this discussion now, since we're having a candid discussion, so we can figure out how we expand opportunities. This is all I'm doing. And what I did is brought other small businesses into the ranks. So it's not about AEDC. I think that's a misnomer. We have to understand that we have to leverage these assets so that we can improve on opportunities. What we perish for as a community is not from talent, it's opportunity. And we have to create those opportunities. And sometimes they're uncomfortable because there's different from what you've been comfortable doing. And I don't shy away from that. I'm not scared of being different. I'm not going to apologize for being different.
Thank you very much for that for those comments. Let me ask you something. You've been there for a long time. How would you characterize your tenure on the board? And what impact have you had as a board member? I know that you've been trying to bring about this issue of this condition for equity, but when you're looking at the various projects and having to vote yes or no on the feasibility of the bond going to a development, what impact have you had? I mean, are you leading the charge on a particular phase of this development? What have you done? That's what I'm really asking. And
over my decade, council member, over my decade, and I will not apologize for this.
Oh, we can't hear your answer. Now we hear it. Okay.
Most projects that come to the board that I'm on, I ask fundamental questions. Who makes up your development team? Because if we're spending local dollars, why can't we ask local participation in these projects? And I'm not going to ever apologize for that. So yeah, one of the questions I ask all the time is, who are your partners? Where are they from? What role are they playing? And yeah, so I do that at every board meeting. So I'm not going to ever change that. If that means I get off the board, then I'm okay with that too, because I'm never going to change what my heart is for my community.
So in this final minute, help me understand, what is the biggest challenge that the board faces or has faced during your tenure? What is it?
I think rising costs. Unit cost is rising at a rate that's really exponential. I am seeing per key costs now in some proposals come in at $1,000 a key. So how do you explain that to a community in Ward 8 that you're paying and you're supporting a project that you're paying $1,000 a door and you call that affordable simply because of where it's located, because of the basis of land? I think that you have to understand Development is not singular. You got to look at all of the impacts and relationships that creates the outcome of an development.
Well, we know that nationwide, the cost of materials, even the workmanship has gone up. But what I'm really asking, the process that you go through to make a determination as to whether or not a project is viable, is that in any way, has something changed since the pandemic, or as we are trying to move forward, or has everything pretty much been the same as far as the process that you use? Is it working? Because you heard me say that I have concerns that I think if you have a project and it comes to the board, that's when, if you are a member of the board, you step away until the final decision is made at the board level. And then you come back and you're a participant again.
Council Chair, my role in my 10 years has been exactly that. I am not aware that I have participated in any board meeting. If I have brought a project that I'm involved in, no matter the level of my involvement, that I have participated in any hearings. I sign a document every board meeting attesting to whether or not I have any minute relationship, and I will recluse myself. And I think that, to my knowledge, most of the board members are doing the same thing. So I don't know if that's the challenge. I do think that what we have learned to do since the pandemic is—
Have to come close to the mic again,
Sorry.
sir. Sorry.
I believe that what we have been doing since the pandemic is doing more virtual. I'm a people person. I like to look at people's eyes. I like to feel your body. I like to see your body language when I'm asking questions about your commitment to serve our community. And I can't get that feel from a virtual experience. So I think for me, the biggest change for me is not so much the process, because I haven't done anything different with the process of eligibility or final determination that I did when I started. And so I don't see that as necessarily an issue. If there are some other issues that's on the table, we need to talk through them and find out what they are. And how do we mitigate that concern? My personal belief right now is that as we expand opportunities, there's always this question: have we gone too far? Are too few people getting participation? My sense is, like everything else, and you know that because you've seen DSLBD's numbers. While we may have thousands of CBEs, there's less than 10% who's participating, who's getting the money. So there is no difference in that experience and the experience in development, because development is all about access to capital. At the bottom, at the end of the day, is access to capital. All this other discussion is moot if you don't have access to capital. It's just that simple. And I cannot grow my community of interested developers or wannabe developers because a lot of them don't have access to capital. And a lot of them don't have the back office support to be sophisticated enough to partner with an experienced developer who's willing to mentor and take them along until you get your footing. So we have to do it.
So, Mr. Jackson, thank you very much for, and we're way over time, but I appreciate your comments. They're very important. So you're saying that the way what I'm understanding is that the board is there to look at the projects. The board is not there to be a training ground for those who may want to be a developer and help them to navigate how they get access to capital. I think you mentioned the Department of Small and Local Business, that perhaps that's one of the charges that's before them, as opposed to when you bring a project to the Housing Finance Agency, you're saying, making a statement that you have a viable entity that you want to receive the bonding. assistance with.
You are absolutely correct, because once you make your final decision, guess what? The project starts. You don't get a do-over. The project starts. The clock runs.
Well, I would like to have further discussion with you about what are some of the things that we can do, if at all. We don't run anything at the council. We just probe, we're investigative and all this great stuff. We have the answers. I do not. I never will say that. But that's our approach. And what I'm trying to do is, in these hearings, to learn from those who have served on a board, what additional expertise do we need? Not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but what more can we do to embellish, to make things work better for the citizens of the District of Columbia? I was there when we were fighting for so-called then minority businesses, as you know, with Marion Barry. So this is not foreign to me, but the idea was to create more opportunities. And if you do not own the banks or the credit unions, and if you don't have board members on those entities, you will not get the money. In fact, across the nation, it is the banks that are flourishing. I was talking to my banker the other day, and I said, you guys have all this money. Why don't you spend it? And they said, credit risk. Okay, credit risk. Okay. And I'm like, well, I'm taking my little $25,000 I've been saving and put it somewhere else. I'm serious. This is very serious, and people are beginning to think like that. But anyway, I don't want to take up much more time. I'm sure Councilmember Silverman has some very pointed information she wants to put out in the airways as well. But I really want to make sure that I understand where the members of this board, and you are three key members of the board, are headed as you're thinking about how we can grow in the District of Columbia, and give some thought to whether or not we need to increase the size of the board. I think we do. I don't know what Silverman thinks, but I think we do. Councilmember Silverman.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. First, Mr. Jackson, I wish you the best in overcoming the flu. So I've been following your career, as you know, since you were deputy mayor for Mayor Williams. I looked a lot different then, no glasses, no gray hair, no lines on my neck. So let's start with the statistic I cited to Mr. Irving, that in a review of 20 months of projects that got DCHFA funding, 26 out of 40 projects involved the 5 members of DCHFA's board. What do you think about that?
I don't think anything negative about that.
Okay.
The reason why, Councilmember, is because unless you break up the transaction to find out what role they're playing, they could play a very minor role, such as doing no more than providing workforce development support. Why would we have an issue because the board member is helping this community engage in workforce opportunities? So
and is that what you think most of the involvement has been?
I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to ever say that unless I look at the data. I mean, you know me like I know you. I'm not going to just make a statement to you unless I can define it and verify it. But what I can tell you from my personal experience,
okay,
the role that we play is multifaceted. I get asked to find people who I can hire. Who can you hire to put into the project? My role could be less than 2%, but I have a role and I will recluse myself from that. So I'm simply saying it's hard to say particular because we're trying to look at a development project in isolation. You can't do it in silos. The development project is a beginning and end process. It has multiple feeding processes that goes into that. So when I try to segregate out and pull just one aspect out, then I'm failing to define the scope of what goes into this project and how you may participate.
Yeah, so I think when I like your energy,
Sorry, I'm passionate.
Mr. Jackson, we share that quality, but I think when you move around, your microphone doesn't always pick you up.
Sorry.
That's okay. So there's a perception in the development community that if you want funding from DC government, you need to work with a certain group of people. And I have to say that given 65% of projects that received DCHFA funding in the last 20 months involved the 5 board members, there's some reality to that perception.
Well,
And
I disagree with that. I disagree. I think the reality is that the numbers bear out the support of a perception, but the numbers by themselves, independently of the fact, does not describe the perception appropriately. So
Okay.
what I get hung up on is we keep using numeric evaluation as a way to define economic development. You can't do that. I've been in this business 30 years. That is not the method by which you determine value and role.
can I use your own valuation as an example? So what I heard both you and Mr. Irving say is that one of the most challenging things for Black developers is access to capital.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Absolutely.
So help me understand where I'm wrong in that I thought DCHFA is providing that access to funds. And if I see you shaking your head, Mr. Irving, but just
let me tell you why you're wrong.
Just give me a moment, Mr.
Okay.
Jackson, in that, there's the perception, which I think the numbers provide some evidence of, is that there's a very small group of people that are taking advantage of our good faith and credit as a government and, our bonding authority to benefit, and does it build affordable housing? Yes. I think that's not the argument that's being made. The argument that's being made is, as you said, Mr. Jackson, that we have thousands of CBEs in this city. We have thousands of people who want a piece of the pie, but the slices are very big of that pie because only a certain group of people have access to that pie. And I think the argument is if 65% of the projects coming before the board have some involvement with board members, either, I think there's 2 perceptions that can be drawn, is that the board is only selecting projects in which fellow board members are part of, or, and this is what I'm hearing more of, frankly, that you need to have a DCHFA board member involved in your project. Maybe it's a small slice, but a small piece of it in order to be taken seriously. And I think the difference here is we're not talking about wrongdoing. We're just saying that there's an inside group that determines how the pie is distributed.
Yeah.
And, so let me ask you this, Mr. Jackson. You said that what we need to do is have more experienced developers mentor. Do you consider yourself an AEDC, an experienced developer?
Yeah, I do now. Yes.
Okay.
But my challenge is like everyone else, access to capital. And I want to clarify a misnomer here.
Oh, okay.
When you come to the Housing Finance Agency, that is just a funding source. That is not the total funding of your project. So what
Right.
you look at is
Part of the
all
pie.
the other things that you've done to work up to finding where is your gap.
Mhm.
Basically, your gap players. And so what we do is figure out what gap makes sense. given totality of the project. So I think we start looking at the end game in isolation. I think that's my fear about development. And that's why I changed the notation of what I do. I'm a community asset builder because I think we got confused with development.
Let's stay on that for a second.
Because development is
Yeah.
it's more than just DC HFA funding.
Okay.
And most Black and brown developers, I will say to you without question, will need multiple sources of funding to achieve their outcome.
So I think you used your term, you're a community asset builder. I think the question that a lot of people have is you and Mr. Irving, some of the most experienced developers in our city, and certainly you have an interest in increasing not only the amount of affordable housing, but in the amount of Black and brown developers who benefit from our taxpayer dollars, right? But it seems like that hasn't happened because the same people keep getting projects approved, like the pie doesn't seem to expand. Or I don't know if the pie, or there's maybe more slices, because the same people keep getting the money. And, I guess I would say to you, I agree with that. I think the strange thing here is I agree with you. We have thousands of CBEs, but only 10% are getting the money. And so that means that there's a small group of people who are getting the money, but there's a big group of people who want that mentorship and want that access to capital, but they're not getting it. And I think the question is why. And this is where I will say, maybe you can give me some nuanced reasons, but I will tell you, and it was told to me in a coffee conversation among a developer earlier this week, that, there's a perception that there's a small group of people in the district who get access to the pie.
Yeah.
And, here's where it hurts our city. Because first of all, we're not growing that group, especially of Black and brown developers. It's not growing because those folks are saying, you know what, in order to do business, I either gotta do a deal with a known person, but you know what, Fairfax, all the suburbs right now, they all want to do affordable housing too. And I can go and put in a application there and I don't need to know people. I can just put it in on the merits.
Well, council member, I've got to say to you that I totally disagree with that assessment because I don't know many minorities coming out of Washington, D.C. have had any success in Virginia or Maryland with simply going across the bridge and say, I don't need to know who you
Not
are.
in Prince
I'm
George's
just coming
County?
in. Excuse me?
Not in Prince George's?
Even in Prince George's County, it's a process. We have been cultivating relationships with Prince George's County for years. What people may not understand, there's a lot of informal meetings that go on. I'm a member of NAMAC. We meet with the Prince George's NAMAC group. We meet with the National NAMAC group. So these are not isolated issues, Councilman. Okay. We have to understand that we didn't get here overnight. This was a process. It's going to take us a process to get out of here. I'm going to take you back to when you and I first met. You knew, like I knew, that there was this boogeyman that lived east of the river. You couldn't get in. You even with incentives, and my council chair knows that. Even with incentives, we couldn't get investors. We couldn't get businesses to come east of the river and do development until all of a sudden it's sexy now. East of the river is sexy. Its location, its density opportunities, its transportation thoroughfares has created a wealth of opportunities. It's why you see the kind of growth that you are now seeing moving east of the river. The opportunity for density. What we have to do now is understand how do we expand opportunity. A lot of us gained our wealth through home ownership. I don't have to give you this story. You know the redlining that went on here in the city. The council chair knows that. So what we have is a disparity in home ownership, which is a fundamental basis of generating wealth, not just for the day, but intergenerational. So if 70% of your residents are renters. Where is the equity coming from? If we don't change that narrative, if we don't make people uncomfortable to do the right thing, we're never going to change it. I don't have a problem with making people uncomfortable.
So I think
Not at
we have
all.
agreement here, Mr. Jackson. I agree with you, but the question on the table is why does such a small number of developers receive a majority of taxpayer-backed subsidies to fill that gap financing? So that's the question. And I think the interest of the district is that, yes, you know, we want to grow Black and brown smaller developers into those experienced developers. But I think there's a perception, and I'm concerned that there could be reality as well, that they're gatekeepers. They're gatekeepers that are preventing those smaller Black and brown developers from getting the access to capital you talk about, the gap financing you talk about. And so therefore, we don't have really a competitive market because there's a very small group of people who are receiving the vast majority of the funds.
Councilwoman, I would just push
I'm gonna
back.
stop there.
Councilwoman, I would just push back on that because if that was so, we wouldn't have created the HIP program. We have the HIP program that's with smaller developers of color that are in creating affordable housing, purchasing affordable housing. Home ownership. Councilwoman, we are a stack of in the finance change. You must come in with a balance sheet.
Does the HIP program deal with developers or homeowners?
Developers. We create developers to go out and build the homes that the individual will buy.
Okay, well, I'll have to learn more.
So
about
that's a new program. So when people talk about that, we push back against that at this agency. We also push back because we have developed scholarships for people to go away to college just to come back and understand this development that we in. But you must come in with a balance sheet. All we do is stand on top of the balance sheet without bonds, without tax credits, saying that you have a balance of $10 million or more to that we could stack on. Somebody must guarantee the project. And that's why Stan mentioned to you before, even the deals we are in, we have all white partners, just to be point blank, because we don't have the balance sheet to do these projects by ourselves.
It's truth.
We are not standing out here without
a conversation that is worth having. Don't you all agree?
Oh, absolutely.
But I'm 5 minutes over, and Councilmember Bonds is going to walk over to my office and pull me off the screen, I think. So I think it's a great conversation for us to have, and I appreciate having it with you today. Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. I apologize. I'm going over time.
No apology. Thank you. But yes, this is a conversation that we really need.
It's worth having.
Thank you.
It is in my opinion, a conversation that is long overdue for the city to have.
Yes.
And for, you know, for the council to understand what it takes to do a deal and how do we get and grow our minority community of contractors. That is one of the issues. It's been an issue for almost 40 years here in the District of Columbia. So this is not new. And I think that this is an opportunity to face the fact that, you know, there are many issues in the District of Columbia, and thinking and determining how we move forward to achieve equity at every facet of the commerce that helps our community stay afloat and to grow is very, very important. I don't know if we've been fair to you, the nominees, to try and press all of the buttons with you this morning. And Ms. Howard, I see you're still here. I'm sure you have some very strong opinions as well. I love it. It's a great opportunity to do it. In all fairness to you, I think it would be more wholesome for us to take up these issues in a different, we'll do a roundtable where we talk about these issues. And then, you know, my colleagues can grow as I have grown over the 8 years of understanding and, you know, coming to the table with, you know, my 14 years on the executive side and having some understanding of this. It is a challenge. it's a challenge, but we want to come to the table with sincerity as opposed to, well, you know, this is what someone is saying. People are always saying stuff. But the reality is money runs these enterprises. And how do you gain access to the money is tantamount. I came out of the private sector to the council, and I can tell you, there's a long story about the company that I worked with. You know, starting out pouring concrete driveways, and then swimming pools, and a few cracks here and there, and complaints. And then having an opportunity, because they continued to try to formulate their brand, having a big opportunity when the subway came to the District of Columbia. And someone who saw them or worked with them in the cement bin of the development cement bin was remembered. Oh, there is a local person who has this small little company and we got along really well. I know his earnestness to give to community, and whammo, the company got their opportunity.
And look at them
And
today.
the rest is history. Okay, that's a true story. And I would imagine that there are a number of organizations like that who are in the city, you know, who toil, and because of their relationship, you know, someone says, oh, maybe you can do this, try it out, and it works. It doesn't work always. You and I, all of us have been in environments where we have noted the name of a small company and their product that they're producing just doesn't work. There have been situations that we've encountered where it just doesn't work. And we have to, so it's more than just being a company. It's having the capital, and it's having the skill set, and having those that will take you under their wing and help you grow. But remember, this is America. In America, I got mine and you got yours to get. That's really how in the broader world it seems to work. And so, but in DC, as Ms. Howard said, we're unique. We try our very best to bring everyone along. And so I'm hoping that we can do that. So I'm looking forward to this big, broad conversation that we'll have on this matter, definitely. And thank you. And I know a little bit about how we would be feeling to go ahead and move that agenda forward. So thank you. And thank you for letting me throw it out there too this morning. So, Ms. Howard, did you want to make a statement? I sense that you might have something you wanted to say. No?
I do not. My colleagues, they covered it. I'm eager to participate in the roundtable. I do have very strong feelings. So let us know. And I think I'm excited to work together.
All right, the roundtable, it will be, we'll look for a date and contact my committee members. I think that, well, Elise Silverman and I have been here, and I believe that the other members would also want to join us for sure. All right, well, thank you very much. I want to thank our nominees for their testimony today. If the public has any other thoughts or would like to submit written testimony regarding today's nominees, not the roundtable, but the nominees, please email housing@dccouncil.gov, dccouncil, one word, .gov. The hearing record will close at 5 p.m. on Thursday, October 6, 2022. The committee's next meeting will be this afternoon at 1:30 p.m. and we're holding a public hearing regarding Bill 24-0677, the District Waterways Management Authority Establishment Act of 2022. And therefore, this concludes today's roundtable. With that, the time is now 12:13 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned. And thank you all again for your testimony.
Thank you,